In this video, I'll show you how I made this nightstand. It all started when I was asked to make a nightstand from end-grain wood slices. Honestly, it wasn't the best idea, but I couldn't turn it down. After a lot of thinking about what wood to use, the universe stepped in and gave me the chance to buy some beautiful slices from a huge dried chestnut tree. That's when the project really began. Even though the slabs were heavily cracked, some parts still had a moisture content of over 30%. So the first thing I did was dry them properly and level out the surfaces. This wasn't too difficult, since chestnut isn't very hard, but it's still strong enough. Then I started fitting the slices together. This is the most creative and enjoyable part of the whole process. Once all the pieces of the puzzle are ready, it's time for the epoxy. For this project, I made a mold from 2 layers of packing tape, glued together sticky side to sticky side. Before pouring the black epoxy, I treat the surface and let it sit for a few minutes to soak in. This helps reduce unwanted staining and also lets you get a sense of the final color. In the same way, I made the second disc. For the slab that became its base, I decided to make the crack as narrow as possible while keeping its shape. This took significantly more time than the usual process of joining 2 pieces of wood. I keep gaps as small as possible but cut a central groove. It uses more epoxy, but helps it spread better and forms a skeleton, making the piece stronger. Before routing, I sand down the large excess resin on the backside, then route the front surface. I use a metal frame to prevent deformation. It takes time and can feel overkill, but it's better than regretting it later. Finally, the prep work is done, and the project is entering the home stretch. For the final routing, it's best to use new blades to make sanding easier. And here comes the sanding, that stuff everyone loves so much. Removing router marks, even on this small, relatively soft wood piece, it's quite tiring. The sanding process will be repeated a few more times, but this is probably the most important stage, since any marks from the router will be very visible on the finished piece. After sanding, I coat the surfaces with epoxy again, which makes the tabletop harder and smoother. Sanding epoxy, the absolute worst part of the process. Chestnut is pretty porous, so I soaked it in epoxy twice. All this effort gives an amazing 3D surface texture, though it hardly shows on camera. Now it's time for assembly. Not the most exciting part, but enough time to figure out how much such a piece of art might cost. The cost of materials was only $376, but you also have to add the cost of tools, labor, taxes, shipping, and other expenses. So it's great as a hobby, but questionable as a business. If you have any questions or tips, feel free to drop them in the comments. And of course, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can see the full story on my channel. Thanks for watching.